Hi, my name's Sinead. I'm one of the associate solicitors from Complete Clarity Solicitors and Simplicity Legal. I'm here today with my colleague Cara. Cara's one of our associate solicitors and experienced members of our family law team. Cara's here to talk to us today about plan changes in surrogacy law. Cara, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
Good, thank you. Congratulations on your publication in the Herald and the Scottish Legal News on the plan changes to surrogacy. Can you tell us a little bit more about the article, what it said, what those changes are?
So the article had come around because I've got a keen interest in surrogacy and adoption and bringing families together rather than the alternatives, what family solicitors do. So there has been a proposed reform in England and Wales with the English and Welsh Law Commission and the Scottish Law Commission with a reform in terms of surrogacy laws. So currently just now, surrogacy is something that's quite heavily reported in terms of celebrities. It seems to be the done thing. We see it kind of a lot of time put in the press, but there's not many surrogacies that actually go through in Scotland. I would say it's probably only a few hundred per year, so there's not a lot of people that actually do it, and I think people do it for their own reasons. But certainly just now the laws in Scotland surrounding surrogacy is quite unclear. What we do know is that it should not ever be an economical set up. No one should be paid to carry a child for someone, and it should be any payment that is made, then that should just simply be for reimbursement of any costs, any losses that might have incurred. But there are significant changes. So currently just now, the law says to us that in terms of surrogacy, the surrogate who has carried the child is automatically the birth parent of the child until 6 weeks pass, at which point the intended parents would make an application to the court. That's quite a monumental thing. So the changes or the proposed changes in terms of the law would be that the intended parents will automatically become the birth parents of the child. The only way that would ever change would be if the surrogate herself made an objection or refused to give consent, withdrew her consent to that happening, at which point the surrogate becomes the legal parent and the intended parents have to make an application to the court. So in terms of reported cases, there's very little in terms of any difficulties that have ever happened between surrogates and birth parents, or the intended parents, for having the child, but it's to alleviate any issues that might actually happen in the future. One of the other issues as well, that provides a lot more clarity in terms of what payments can be received by a surrogate, because again, they've not to be paid for what they're enduring, their body, but they are allowed to be paid for things like losses, maternity, loss of wages, for example, insurances, those kind of things. Any travel costs, anything that the surrogate themselves has financially lost out on, there's a lot more clarity surrounding that in terms of payments that can be made. And one of the biggest and most significant things that I have seen is that there will now be a surrogacy register. Okay. So what that means is that a child who's born via a surrogate, that will be noted in a register, so that when the child is of age, i.e. an adult, then they can find where they've come from, really. We would imagine that would be given by the intended parents anyway, but that register will be there, available.
So that all sounds very interesting, and quite significant changes in terms of what's coming. Right at the start you mentioned about adoption. What's involved in adoption? How can adoption help parents become parents?
Yeah. So adoption works in 3 different ways. So one of the first ways that it can happen would be whereby a person or persons is registered as a foster carer. They will have a child that comes to them for foster care via the social work department. If that child can't go back home to their birth parents, then sometimes there can be occasions where the foster parents themselves actually adopt that child. That's few and far between, but it is a possibility. One of the next ways that it can happen would be where there's what's called a kinship care arrangement in place. So that is where, as part of a family, if mum and dad are struggling to look after a child, then a family member will assist and become a kinship carer. In very rare circumstances, that can also lead to adoption as well, particularly similarly if mum and dad are unable to have the child back, kinship carer can actually then proceed to adopt or look at having orders granted in a different route. Okay. But one of the main ways that adoption happens would be via, I suppose you would describe it as like an adoption agency. It's through the social work department. You register yourself stating to them that you wish to adopt a child, either you on your own or you with a partner. And that can be a same-sex couple, that can be a mixed-sex couple, or a person on their own. And over the years I've dealt with a lot of adoptions, particularly I've dealt with a lot of same-sex adoptions, so it's something that I've always had a keen interest in. And so that follows a process whereby you submit an application to the court, reports are lodged with the court, ultimately you then appear at court and tell the court that everything is fantastic, the child is safe, well cared for, you meet the test, the legal test, that it's in the child's best interest for this to be granted, and the court would ultimately grant the order. It does take time, but the reward at the end of it is a family being brought together. And Sinead, I know that you and your wife have been speaking about potentially having a family in the future.
Yep.
Obviously there's various different ways that same-sex couples can have families.
Yep.
What have you spoken about?
So, to be honest, there's not any kind of route to parenthood that I think we would rule out, depending on the circumstances that we found ourselves in at that particular time. One avenue that would be open to us and open to other same-sex couples would be becoming a parent through assisted reproduction. So that would involve IUI insemination, otherwise known as artificial insemination, or alternatively IVF if parents are struggling to conceive for whatever reason. Now, in my view, and I imagine in both of our views, that it's important for parents that are thinking about embarking on that particular journey to take legal advice, because there is legal implications to going through assisted reproduction treatment. So, for example, same-sex couples who are married or in a civil partnership, the parent who's carrying the child would be listed as the mother, and the parent who isn't carrying would automatically be listed as a second parent. That doesn't mean to say that if you're a cohabiting same-sex couple that you can't start a family in that way. It's just that in order to become the second parent, you have to have signed the particular consent forms through a registered clinic in order to protect yourself. I think it's important to note though, in either circumstance, the sperm donor is not listed as the father in that particular situation.
Absolutely.
It's both members of the same-sex couple.
I think it's important to know that some couples will go through alternative routes in order to have children, particularly for same-sex couples. And certainly we know of experiences in different types of situations where that has happened, and there's routes that has to be followed for that, where a parent is not noted on the birth certificate. So I think it's important to note that us as solicitors, we are here to actually help make families rather than dealing with things that might go wrong. So come to us when you need help in the first instance when you're embarking on this journey, because it's a nice journey for us to be in part of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're 100% right. Thanks very much, Cara, for taking time to talk to me today. That's been really informative.
Thank you.
If there is anything at all that we can help you with, or you want further advice or information in relation to any of these matters, please do feel free to contact us.